many years we have been fed the lines, we have heard the promises, the guarantees, and we have watched them crumble around our ears. We have waited for a government who will truly govern for the people on the ground and not themselves.
Here.
We have waited and pleaded for people with principles to stand by their principles with every breath, that they will never be sold, never back down, and always have a backbone. We, in fact, as a people, have been brought to our knees, north and south, left politically homeless, watching people slide past on lies with no accountability, and again get away with it. And we are here to say no more. We have no crowns on our head. We don't consider ourselves special or important. In fact, quite the contrary. We are privileged to say we are of the people, for the people, on the ground and everywhere. 5 years ago, I personally was left at a crossroads. I had nobody left to vote for, and I'm sure if I ask for a show of hands, everybody's will be in the air.
Yeah.
People coming to my door, making me promises, talking to me about the Irish language with no Irish, talking to me about the rights of women, but not of the female baby, or any baby in the womb, talking to me and making all the promises of the day. And I closed the door that night and knew for the first time, as somebody who has taught their students, taught their children, taught their family, and played it, never waste your vote. I was politically homeless for the first time in my life. And I did hope, as somebody with an interest in politics from a young age, I hoped a party would come along. And at 18 years of age, I knew there was even then no party that I could sign my name to. And when I heard 5 years ago about Aontú, like that, I signed my name. Tick, tick, tick. I voted Aontú. And as a teacher, I always try, and as a mother, to instill in our children, no matter what, no matter who, no matter what the price is, do the right thing. Stand up for what you believe in. Try to get over that fear and do the right thing. And we would not be here today had one man not done the right thing, stood up, taken that voice, and we all know he is the man, the myth, the legend, Peadar Toibin.
August, first mental note, next year we get a bigger room, okay? First of all, I'm absolutely delighted to be here. You guys are a sight for sore eyes to see such you in massive numbers. Every year, increasing numbers are coming to these Ardeshna new faces, new skills, new people. And I want to thank you all so much for coming here, I really do. Aontú is our membership. We are simply the sum of our membership. Our ability to function and our ability to do the things we need to do is because of you. There are a number of people I want to thank, first of all. I'd like to thank some of the ambassadors who've come here today, and also those from the diplomatic corps of some of our embassies who are here today with us. Thank you very much for coming along. It's great to see you. We are a party that doesn't get any state funding whatsoever, so a lot of the other political parties, they have event management companies to run these occasions. We simply don't. We have event management people, volunteers, who do the work for us. And many of those have burnt the midnight oil significantly over the last number of weeks to put this event on show as well, which is fantastic. And I want to thank all of those who've done that. I'm not going to go and name too many people because I get in fierce trouble, but I do think this man standing in front of me with the camera, Declan McGuinness, needs a thank you. I also want to thank Liam Reichenberg as well for the massive amount Billy, Laura and Luna, who in the offices are also very, very important to what we're about. Luckily enough, tonight we get the honour to give honour to Anne Brawley, who was one of our founding members and one of the legends of our movement over the last number of years. So thank you, Anne Brawley, for all you've done for us and for coming along today. And then finally, all of these great candidates, especially the people who are already elected representatives, the great Jim Cogs, Sarah O'Reilly and Peadar Toibin, who are doing phenomenal work. Our deputy leader, Gemma Brawley, who is doing a fantastic job. And this is my last thanks, I promise you in this. Just I want to thank Deirdre Toibin, because without Deirdre Toibin, I would not be able to do the work that I'm doing. Okay, so we gathered for the first time nearly 5 years ago. It's an incredible journey that we've been on. Over that time, we have fought local elections, north and south. We fought general elections, north and south. And we fought our first referendums a couple of weeks ago, and we found out that we're quite good at fighting referendums. Yes! I believe that these referendums have shown that the government and most of the opposition are not listening to the people. They are completely detached from real Ireland and ignoring exactly what real Ireland wants, and that needs to change. I believe that Ireland is actually being ruled by a political cartel, a metropolitan elite who are making decisions for this country oblivious to the needs of the people. They seem to be in a constant feedback loop with some NGOs and some within the media. They're not listening to the voices of the people, and that is a real mistake that has to change. But I will say this, in this referendum, we in Aontú, we burst that bubble once and for all. It was a David versus Goliath campaign, and we took on every single political party in Leinster House, which is absolutely incredible. Now, I wanted to say one thing about those referendums. It's incredible that the government framed those referendums on the issue of care, first of all, which I think was extremely cynical. Because 1 in 8 people in this country are working as carers, unpaid, at the moment. They do it out of love. It can be fiercely arduous, it can be 24/7, it can be physically difficult, and in most cases, it means they can't earn another income at all. And yet, so many of those carers are actually fighting tooth and nail just to be able to get some financial support from the state. An incredible situation. So the government framed it as helping carers, and yet they're refusing to give them the support that they need. Also, I was on studio debates with ministers, and I mentioned the issues facing people with disabilities. And ministers actually said to me that this is not about people with disabilities. And I actually think that was a disgraceful situation, which actually shows the government's mask slip in relation to that. We critically analysed those referendums. We recognised those referendums as damaging, and we took the decision to oppose them. Now, when we did, we braced ourselves because we figured that the establishment would come and try to pigeonhole us in terms of this issue. But Aontú was founded for the purpose of standing up for what we believe in. We were not founded to fold and change direction with the prevailing wind, and we stood by the people of Ireland in those referendums. I also want to thank, if I can, the other politicians of some of the other organisations who also campaigned for the referendum. I'm going to steal Jim Codd's line here. Unfortunately, some of these campaigners only started campaigning after the referendum results came out. Aontú, in many ways, is the only opposition in the Dáil, and that is a fact. And you'll probably hear only Aontú has done this numerous times over the next few minutes. But I'll give you another example. I'll give you the issue of the hate speech bill. So, we believe, obviously, hate is wrong. We abhor hate. We ask people to engage respectfully on issues. But the truth of the matter is, in a liberal democracy, the engine of that democracy is debate. It is the competition of ideas. And if you censor one side, if you create a chilling effect on one side, there is no competition of ideas, and the danger is that we swing significantly in one ideological direction. So we oppose this. The only political party in the Dáil, well, one other political party voted against it, but they wanted it to go further in places, as such as well. Now, when I was in the middle of that debate, I was shocked because my former colleagues in Sinn Féin were on one side of me, and they were welcoming this bill with open arms, an incredible situation. You know, they should have been most anti-censorship because they were the target of Section 31 a number of years ago. It should have been in their DNA to oppose censorship. Yet, unfortunately, under the Mary Lou flip-flop shop, we have a situation where Sinn Féin don't seem to stand for anything at the moment, and that's absolutely wrong. I also wanted to talk about the issue of farming, because again, Aontú was the only political party in Leinster House that opposed the damage, the cost and family and farmers of the Climate Action Bill. And farmers, as we heard today earlier from many of the speakers, are in a perfect storm at the moment. A perfect storm. In 2011, there were 73,000 people who identified as farmers. Now that number is down to 61,000. It fell 11% in that period of time. And that process is accelerating. A third of all farmers are over the age of 65 now at the moment. And Chagas reckons that only a third of farmers are actually making a living off the farm. The rest are either going into debt or have to work off the farm to be able to work to make a living. And the most frustrating element about this is there's plenty of money in food. God knows we pay for it at the shops. But the money is landing in the supermarkets and the factories, and the people who do most work when it comes to the production of food are simply not getting the funding at all. And then we have we in Aontú have produced a bill which, for a limited period of time, would actually put a floor under the price of beef at the cost of production to force the factories and the supermarkets to negotiate properly with farmers around the country. But it's not just the factories and the supermarkets. The government are ranging up against farmers at the moment. They're putting up the prices of all of the inputs. They're also making more regulation on a daily basis. They're making it more difficult for farmers to actually operate. Incredibly, the government is supporting the Mercosur deal, which is clearing rainforests in South America to produce beef to bring over to Europe to supplant our beef. And we believe that that's absolutely wrong. I want to talk about regional development. I want to talk about regional development as well. Regional development. Ireland is turning into a lopsided city-state. Dublin is overheating in many ways at the moment. A third of the country is becoming a commuter hell, where families have to commute maybe 3 hours back and forth to work on a daily basis. And a third of the country is now emptying of its young people. So we know the average age in Balbriggan, for example, is 10 years less than the average age in Killarney at the moment. Young people with degrees pretty much have to come to the Dublin area to get a job, but of course they can't afford to live in Dublin, so they have to live 30, 40, 50 miles away from Dublin to be able to pay their mortgages. And that's absolutely wrong. It's fraying the fabric of families in this country. I know so many families that they have to accordion their whole family experience into about an hour every evening in a very stressful situation because of the commuter hell that they're living in at the moment. And we seek to change that. And I'll tell you, one of the ways we're going to seek to change that is to build a new international city. This city is either going to be an existing town or an existing city elsewhere in the country. But we want to see investment front-loaded into that city so that it builds to a critical mass that draws down international investment in its own right and becomes a counterbalance to Dublin. It's been done in other countries such as Denmark. They selected our house, which is now a balance to the city of Copenhagen. It can be done in this country if we had the government's will to do it. But the truth of the matter is, I actually believe that this government is a South Dublin government, and that's no disrespect to the good people of South Dublin, but it is the truth. We have constituencies in South Dublin where 4 of the TDs are actually ministers at the moment, and we have 10 other counties in the country where there isn't a minister at all, which is an exceptionally disgraceful situation. Many of these ministers can't see beyond the M50 when it comes to investment, and we want to see that change. We want to see proper investment into the regions, a border innovation zone to make sure that we start to help the 11 counties that are suffering at the moment because of partition, to make sure that we bring investment there with regards to the A5 into the northwest. We want to see Rosslare Europort properly function. We want to see Bordemona stop selling off all its land and its contracts and become an engine of enterprise for the Midlands region. We want to see the Western Corridor actually built. Build the infrastructure and they will come. And that's really important to us. The cost of living is another issue that we have been focusing upon, I believe, more successfully than most of the other political parties. It's hard to overstate the anger amongst people. There's 670,000 people currently below the poverty line at the moment. A quarter of all domestic gas customers are in arrears. And there's about 200,000 electricity customers in arrears. Now, we're paying some of the most expensive electricity prices in the whole of Europe. The biggest operator is a semi-state controlled by the government. And actually, I'm going to rob another line, this time from Gerard Sheehan, our candidate in Ongar. He says, the Greens are worried about the end of the world, but most Irish people are worried about the paycheck at the end of the month. And that's what's actually happening. Now, we put in the parliamentary questions, and we found that the government are actually took more last year in the jaws of a cost of living crisis, in fuel taxes, than they ever did before. So in the middle of the worst cost of living crisis in a generation, they gave you tea and sympathy, but they pilfered your pockets at the same time. And that is one of the reasons why this government are so damaging to so many families. I want to talk about the COVID investigation that we're looking at as well. And Ty Daly was here from Nursing Home Ireland. We also had Care Champions here earlier who are doing tremendous work too. Aontú is the only political party that's looking for a public statutory investigation into what happened to older people in nursing homes during COVID. It is an incredible situation. Nursing homes were the ground zero of the COVID crisis. The state moved thousands of older people from nursing homes from hospitals into nursing homes. Many of them weren't tested for COVID. Many of them seeded, unbeknownst to themselves, COVID in that location. And as a result, it is likely that thousands of people died in nursing homes at that time. And yet, the government are refusing to save their skin, to hold any investigation into that issue. And that is horrendous. Most of the other political parties are not raising it. Why? Because they were on the same side as the government in relation to that issue as well. Only Aontú is raising that. I want to talk about accountability, and this is a significant platform for our new political movement. Accountability is key. Now, Leo Varadkar promised that in 2020 the new National Children's Hospital will be built. It will be built for 700 million euros, save an asteroid hitting the planet. Now, it seems that Fine Gael government are actually more destructive than an actual asteroid, because today it is 2024 and it's not built. But they have spent 2.25 billion euros of your money on the National Children's Hospital. The same party has spent 300 million euros on the Metro North without putting a shovel in the ground. They spent 22 million euros on ventilators that never worked, that are actually taking 50 grand a year just to put in storage. They actually ordered 1,000 buses that never moved an inch because someone forgot to apply for the planning application for the electric chargers on those buses. Roger O'Gorman has bought 37 buildings for housing asylum seekers. Only one of those in 2 years is actually in use. Nobody is ever held to account in our political system, so nothing ever changes. Imagine how transformative it would be politically if that a person didn't do their job, that there would be a cost to do it. That very simple idea that a person didn't do their job. And I want to say this to the government. Spending public money is not less important than spending their own money. Spending public money is more important than spending their money, and they better start being careful with people's money from now on. I want to talk about assisted suicide because, again, Aontú is the only political party pushing back against assisted suicide in Leinster House. And many people were shocked that after what happened in the nursing homes during COVID, that the government started to raise this issue shortly after COVID abated. Palliative care doctors and nurses and consultants, those people who are most invested, who know more about this issue than anybody else, are shouting and screaming stop at the government. But again, the political bubble is ignoring the voice of the experts on this issue, and they're simply listening to the campaigners on this. And that's absolutely wrong. We want to make sure that nobody ever feels under pressure to end their lives, that everybody is valued. We don't live in a neoliberal economy where a person is just their economic value. Their value is because they're a human being, and we will stand behind that value all the time. The human right to life. Again, shockingly, Aontú is the only political party that stands for the human right to life of everybody. It is an incredible sentence to have to say. We're the only party standing up for the 3-day wait period at the moment that has saved thousands of lives. There's about 5,000 children and their mothers at home today as a result of that 3-day wait period. Yet the political system are doing their damnedest to actually get rid of that. We also want to make sure that no child ever has their life taken from them because they have a disability. That must be made illegal in this country. And 85% of abortions that happen in this country are as a result of the economic situations that mothers find them in. Isn't it incredible that the so-called pro-life or pro-choice parties basically say they're pro-choice, but so many women feel that they have to have an abortion because there is no choice for them. We as a party want to give them an economic choice to be able to raise their children. On the issue of housing is one of the biggest derelictions of duty that the government have ever been involved. There's no doubt in my mind that the government stopped building housing a decade ago has caused the situation that we're in today. 100,000 people in housing distress at some level. 14,000 people currently who are homeless in Ireland, and people dying in the streets. And I will say this, it has been Aontú's work, the work of people like Sarah Beasley and others who have been raising the existence of people who are living on our streets. We have raised it in the dog, about 400 people. About 400 people have died on the streets of Dublin in the last 5 years. No other political party has been raising that in it all, except for Aontú. We've also found through our parliamentary questions that there's 3,500 empty homes currently, local authority homes in the state. The state is actually the biggest hoarder of empty homes at the moment. We found out that it's taken on average 8 months for the state to flip an empty local authority home to make it available to somebody. Now, it takes 3 weeks for a private rental accommodation to do the same thing. How can it be tolerable for the state to sit on valuable homes in this time of crisis for so long? There's also another situation, there's about 160,000 empty homes in the state at the moment. That's like sending ships abroad with food in the famine to have this situation happen to us. The government have created a grant system for it, but it's so bureaucratic that you nearly have to be homeless and have an empty home to be able to get it. And the government are delivering 4 of these grants on a monthly basis. They will have the situation resolved in 3,100 years at this rate. We want to tackle vacancy. We want to bring home Irish construction workers from abroad. We want to improve the conditions for apprentices. We want to see the numbers of planners in the system radically increase. We want to see proper investment into public housing. We want to see vulture funds properly taxed. We want to bring Airbnbs in big cities back into long-term use. I want to talk about the issue of migration, and it's a very, very serious issue and a very, very delicate issue as well. Aontú was the first political party to raise the damage that the government is doing in terms of this issue over the last while. They seemed to take no interest in it until the polls said that 70% of the population were simply not happy with what the government is doing. We put in the parliamentary questions in relation to the government's actions, and they were shocking. We asked a question in relation to how many people who have failed the deportation asylum system, how many of those people have had a deportation actioned? And the government said only 15% of people who received a deportation order had those deportations actioned, which is an incredible figure. We also found out that 5,000 people have come through Dublin Airport last year without a passport or a travel document. Another incredible figure. We asked as well, what is the situation in terms of how people are coming into the country? And we found out that 75% of people coming into the country, the government doesn't know. And we asked the minister, why not? And she said, because we don't ask the question. Now, for the government not to be managing an issue of this importance is hammering the confidence of the people. And just in the last couple of days, we found out that actually 80% of the people are actually coming through the north of Ireland. We actually raised that a year and a half ago, but the minister would not listen to us in relation to that. There is breathtaking incompetency in this. People who genuinely need asylum are actually being forced to wait years for the first application to be made, and maybe are 10 years in the system. Many of them are going into direct provision and can't actually leave there because of a housing crisis as well. Now today, we found out, this embargo is till 5 o'clock, so I can say it out loud. We found out that Rishi Sunak has said this shocking sentence. He says that the British Rwanda policy is working because now it's leading to an influx of migrants into the south of Ireland. Now that is wrong on so many levels. I don't even know where to start in relation to that. It's an unacceptable statement. But I will say this, Aontú has said from the start that Ireland must be treated as a unit, north and south, in terms of migration. There must be an Irish sea border with regards to the movement of people. If the government of the European Union can provide an Irish sea border for goods, services and sausages, they should be able to provide an Irish sea border for people as well, and that is out of bounds. Every month there seems to be a crisis in another town in the country. Some of the people involved are ordinary people with ordinary concerns. We want the government to start listening to them, to start talking to them, and to start consulting them. But I will say this, there's a small amount of extremists in this country as well, and they're seeking to ferment discontent caused by this government, and they must be opposed as well. The colour of a person's skin is of no more significance than the colour of their eyes. And every citizen must be treated equally in this country. I believe the government's refusal to work in partnership with communities is actually creating a petri dish of rumour currently around the country. And the valuable contributions that so many people who have come to Ireland over the last few years is seemingly being forgotten about by some people in Ireland, and that's wrong. We need to make sure that we have a system based on compassion and common sense, but the government have kicked that common sense out of the equation for the last number of years, unfortunately. I want to talk about the issue of the EU Migration Pact as well before I finish this issue. And this is important. The government want to outsource the control of the migration system to the EU. Now, when I challenged the Taoiseach in relation to this in the Dáil the other day, he said, Peadar, he says, the island of Ireland is a small island in the middle of the ocean. Sure, we won't be able to handle such a big issue by ourselves. And I stood up and I said, I'm sure there's plenty of people like you, Simon, who said the same thing to Padraig Pearse, Michael Collins and Eamon De Valera back in 1916. Nobody knows what kind of challenges we're going to have in the next number of years in relation to migration. But we do know, if we have self-determination, we will be able to control those laws and we will be able to mitigate some of the challenges that we receive. But if we hand over those powers to the European Union, we no longer have any say. no say over in relation to how many people come to the country or the financial contribution that we have to make. And I asked the Taoiseach, how much will it cost? And he said he did not know. Now, if I wanted to get a park bench from my local park in Navan, and I wanted to get a grant from it, they would say to me, Peadar, I want 3 quotations from you to tell me how much it's going to cost. And here was the minister signing up politically to a project in which he doesn't even know the cost of. We do not agree with the EU Migration Pact, and if the government want to proceed with it, they should put it before the people in way of referendum. Aoife Johnston, in the words of her parents, was an easygoing, happy-go-looking 16-year-old girl who went to school and did summer jobs. Aoife was brought to University Hospital Limerick by her parents on the recommendation of the GP because she had deteriorating sepsis. Sepsis is meant to be triaged within 10 or 15 minutes. She wasn't triaged for over an hour. She waited 12 more hours just to see a doctor. She spent 15 hours in total vomiting and in extreme pain, waiting for an antibiotic that would have saved her life. That antibiotic never came. And parents and patients struggled to draw attention to her situation in that hospital. There was a coroner's case just recently in relation to this, and Dr. Jim Gray, who was the ED consultant on duty on the day, he said that Limerick University Hospital is a death trap 5 years ago, and it's still a death trap now. Martin Abbott died in ED University Hospital in 2019. He was found dead on the floor. He could not be ventilated because rigor mortis has set in. These 2 issues alone are good enough reason for the Minister for Health to resign today. Aontú fights to stop the closures of any ED. We have campaigners like Gemma Bolly, who's the chair of the Causeway Coast Hospital in Coleraine. We have many campaigners amongst our group, so we will fight to make sure every ED is kept open. Not only that, and Sarah Beasley can bring this message home to the Midwest, we will reopen an ED in Midwest to take the pressure off Limerick University Hospital today. I just want to mention a couple of other issues, and this goes back to the issue of accountability, the lack of it. Aontú parliamentary questions show that 500,000 people have been damaged in hospitals over the last 5 years. 3,150 people have been killed by accidents over the last 5 years, an incredible figure. This state has paid 3.3 billion euros in compensation just over the last 5 years. Imagine if that money was invested into the hospitals initially, rather than having to be paid out on the death of somebody else. It's an incredible situation. It's happening because there's so much pressure on those hospitals. Doctors, last year 700 doctors graduated. 700, 400 of those emigrated. And as a result, we have to backfill in with doctors from the rest of the world. We have GPs who are as rare as hen's teeth at the moment. People can't get them. And as a result, they're going into the EDs. The EDs are so full that ambulances can't even deliver their patients into the EDs anymore. It's taking, in some cases, hours for ambulances to deliver their patients. We found out that in 2016, there were 650 people dead by the time an ambulance arrived. Last year, it was 1,080 people who were dead before those ambulances arrived. Where is the accountability in this? I asked the Secretary General of the Department a question when he came before the Finance Committee and said, has anybody lost their job, been moved sideways, had a pay reduction for any of that damage? And he says it did not happen in his knowledge at all. So we will inject accountability into the political system. We will make sure that there's investments in primary care and community-based systems. We will make sure that those on exceptionally high salaries are tackled, but the doctors and nurses see that their pay and conditions are actually increased as well. And we will stop layers of new management being created over and over again in the HSE. I want to speak about speak briefly about the issue of gender. Aontú believe that a woman is a female adult. Shockingly, we're the only political party in Leicester House that seems to be able to say that. Again, if this was a drinking game and everybody had to have a drink, and I said Aontú's the only political party, we'd be all in trouble at this. But it is incredible. And we raised the flag over young Irish children being sent to Tavistock in London over the last while. We said it was wrong that they were being sent into a location which was built on gender ideology and not on science and fact. The government pushed back and told us to stay quiet. Now we've had the CAS report, which is a damning indictment of the practices that went on, which put children on a pathway in terms of surgery and medication and chemicals that they can't reverse from. We have been vindicated by the CAS report, and we are calling for a full public inquiry in terms of the actions of the government on this. In relation to TUSLA, very quickly, 90,000 children referred to TUSLA just in the last year. That's 35,000 more than actually did the Leaving Cert last year. An incredible figure. Some of those children are being put into locations that are neither regulated or have staff that are unvetted. If it happened 20 years ago, the political parties in Leicester House would be shouting up saying there's a need for a public inquiry and an investigation. Yet in real time, the political establishment is silent on it. And we found out, and through the good work of Luke Silk in relation to this, we found out that many of those children are going missing from those locations. And some of those children who are going missing are being preyed upon by criminal gangs for exploitation. And there are children in the room, so I won't go into any more details in relation to that. It's absolutely shocking that that's allowed in our country at the moment. Judge Sims was a judge in the Children's and the Family Court. He raised his head above the parapet. He gave the minister 4 documents explaining what's happening. The minister, Roger O'Gorman, shredded 3 of those documents. When asked why, he said for GDPR reasons. What about the human reasons, Minister Roger O'Gorman, in relation to this? I want to talk about crime and antisocial behaviour as well. And Ireland, unfortunately, is becoming an increasingly violent place. Rape and sexual assault has radically increased over the last 10 years. I had a public meeting in my own constituency. Women who worked in retail were telling me that children were involved in shoplifting and threatened those women with sexual assault if they went to the Gardaí. An incredible situation. Those women now get a lift to and from work. They won't walk down the street to and from work. They've never gone to the Gardaí. It's one of the thousands of crimes that are happening that never gets reported to the Gardaí at the moment. And why is this happening in our society? It's not happening by accident. Every year for the last 5 years, the number of Gardaí in the state has fallen. It's an incredible figure. And again, into parliamentary question, we found out the more Gardaí are resigning and retiring than ever before on a monthly basis. We found that more Gardaí are being attacked on a daily basis than ever was the case before. Garda morale is on the floor currently, and Garda recruitment is grinding to a halt. And one of the reasons is because of the lack of welfare. So we in Aontú, we decided to create a bill that if anybody attacks a doctor, a nurse, an ambulance driver, a paramedic, or a person working in the Garda Síochána and damages them, that they should have a minimum custodial sentences. Because these public service workers should be able to go to work without fear of being injured in the future. It's incredible the dysfunction, just what we saw a couple of weeks ago. So the GRA didn't invite Drew Harris. So what was the reaction by the minister? Her reaction was to snub the GRA back. Rather than get everybody in the rooms and force them to start to cooperate and work together, she decided not to get involved and to snub them. So we need a radical change in that. And the Garda numbers are not just affecting crime and antisocial behaviour, they are affecting road deaths as well. And every morning we turn on the radio, very few of us can not be stopped in our traffic to hear of another young person losing their lives. Aontú found out that there's been a 40% decrease in the number of traffic Gardaí in the state over the last 10 years, a massive increase. So much so that behaviour is changing. Drink driving is not the stigma that it used to be. And the government keeps saying, well, we'll get tougher laws. We'll fight this with tougher laws and maybe even more speed limits. No law in the world is worth a damn if you're not going to enforce it, Minister. We need Garda on the roads to enforce it. I want to talk about Irish unity. Irish unity, I believe, is an issue of justice, first and foremost. Self-determination is an issue of democracy as well. The way for people to be able to rule themselves, make decisions for themselves. When we make decisions, we can influence those decisions. When others make those decisions, we can't. If people make the wrong decisions, we can hold them to account. If those decisions are made in London, or Brussels, or Berlin, we can't hold those people to account either. But there's also an economic reality to it. Now, about a few years ago, I had the opportunity to carry out the first, believe it or not, Oireachtas report on Irish unity since partition. And in that report, I spoke to 100 people from across the north, from all backgrounds, trade unionists, business people, people working in civic society, farmers, etc. All of them agreed that if we plan together, fund together, and deliver services together, they are cheaper services, they're more efficient, and they're better services. That's a threat to nobody, and we should start that project now, straight away. I also want to say something about the Legacy Bill too. The Legacy Bill is absolutely incredible. So many people, just like you and me, lived normal lives in the north of Ireland during the most difficult elements of the Troubles. So many of those were actually killed by the British state. Worse than that, those killings were covered up. Now, Britain separated themselves, the government separated themselves from those cover-ups at the time and said that, well, they didn't know anything about it. But they introduced a legacy bill in Westminster just recently that's passed. They can't distance themselves from that cover-up because that legacy bill places responsibility straight in the middle of Westminster. It is the son and heir of the policy of collusion and cover-up that happened for so many years in the north of Ireland. Every family has a right to know what happened to their loved one. Every family has a right to know the truth what happened to their loved one. And I will say this, if anybody wants to check the record of Leinster House, Aontú is a party that raised that issue more in the Dáil over the last 5 years. The bigger party that is meant to be representing people in the north of Ireland raised it lesser, at a less number of times than ourselves in that period of time. An incredible situation. The other point of this is we forced the government to go to the European Court of Human Rights, where they've now brought the British government, and we're hopeful that that will bring truth and justice to families. And the last thing I want to say to you guys, and you're probably delighted to hear that sentence now at this stage. But listen, since the referendum, we have 400 new members join our organisation. Our membership is just shy of 2,000, which is incredible. And our poll numbers are starting to grow at a rate. And actually, the last poll in the Red Sea showed that we were ahead of the Green Party, the Labour Party, and People Before Profit, which is an incredible thing. Now, they've been around for about 183 years, collectively between them. We've been around for 5 years. Now, they have 154 elected representatives between them. We have 4 elected reps. They get millions of state funding every year. We get 0 state funding every year. They get oceans of broadcast media. We get the clippings of 10. And we only get what we get because of the work that we do on the ground. What is the difference between Aontú and these political parties? We are listening to the people on the ground, and we will stand up for what we believe in. There is elections in the offing, as some people will know. I know the shoe leather is worn off a rake of people here already, and I'm delighted to say that. There will be competitors in that. There will be some independents who are standing in the elections. There are definitely some good independents standing there, there's no doubt. But remember this, there's also independents that regularly support the government standing in these elections too. And the other issue I would say to you is that the government and the establishment will be delighted if the opposition vote is fractured over a range of different independents and political parties. What they fear most is that vote concentrating in one cohesive, organised political movement, and that movement is Aontú, I have no doubt about that. We're delighted to say that at this moment in time we have 65 excellent local election and European election candidates. Many of them you see in front of you tonight. And these are individuals who I believe are at the precipice of pushing real change over the next while. We'll also be challenging for the European Parliament elections. I'll be standing in Midlands North West. The reason that I'm standing in Midlands North West is to crowbar the real issues affecting people into the political discussion, because if we leave it to the political establishment, will know that our views, our values, our needs will not be represented. We've also got two other candidates. We have Aisling Constantine, who's up the front here today, who's standing in the Dublin area. She is suitably tired in Dublin electric blue. I see you here tonight, her later. She is a woman of great backbone, a woman who has stood up for many years on the issue of women's rights, and we're delighted to have her with us too. I'm delighted to have Patrick Murphy here as well for the Ireland South. Patrick is a grafter. He is a man of the people. He is the man of the community. I have no doubt about that. And he has done extraordinary things. And he'll told you about the fact that Patrick Murphy went to the Russian ambassador. He negotiated the withdrawal of the Russian fleets from Irish waters. Now let me say this. Simon Coveney sent a letter to the Russian ambassador in relation to this. And like the Donegal ad, they have it on file at the moment. I also want to pay tribute to Sarah Beasley, who's standing in the mayoral elections at Limerick as well. Sarah has been with us from the start. She's a credit to our organisation. She runs our office in Limerick at the moment for many months, and she helps so many families there. And by running Sarah, we show that we mean business in terms of Limerick. I would love to mention all of these candidates in one by one if I could. I can't, obviously, because there's so many. But these are really, really good people. These are people who are already invested in their communities, people immersed in the campaigns that really mean a lot to their people. They have raised their profiles significantly in the last while, but they need your help, and this is really, really important. We are, I believe, in the dying days of the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Green government, but what happens next is up to you. And that is really important, because we cannot carry this. The men and women on this top table are no more responsible for what happens in this republic than you. We are all equal here with equal responsibilities. So what I'm asking is, if you want to see a breakthrough for your values, get involved in the campaign. If you want to see a change in Ireland, get involved in the campaign. Membership plus activism equals change. As I said at the start, in Aontú, membership are the party, as simple as that. We need to have thousands of doors and thousands of people, conversations over the next while. We need to deliver tens of thousands of leaflets. We have 12,000 posters to put up, and we need help putting those 12,000 posters over the next while as well. The ability for Aontú to make the breakthrough is down to yourselves. And just I want to close with the words of Martin Luther King. I believe that the arc of justice is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's really, really important. But it won't happen unless you stand up to be counted in these elections. Do it for yourselves, do it for your family, do it for Aontú, and do it for Ireland. For me,